Hmm? You'd love to talk about the lesson. Good. So there's lots of ways that we can dissect a lesson. Okay, let's start with why did he put that lesson in? After seeing people doing that big, and I'll give you a hint, this is a big extension lesson, right? In the sitting. Why did he put that lesson in? Yep. And what are two fundamental ways? I'm going to walk away from you because I'm going to spread my attention. Why might people be having difficulty with that twatching lesson, so the twisting, arching lesson? I'm not looking at anybody, so I have to do it at work. Because if I look at people, they think they have to answer, or they hide from me. But they might have trouble lengthening their flexors. Yep. Yes, the relationship between the flexors and the extensors, and particularly in that diagonal kind of way. So, are there a lot? I mean, I'm asking you dumb questions, but there are a lot of functions where we do have to be symmetrical when we fold, and maybe symmetrical when we lengthen the front of us. Are there? Put that as a question. Can you think of functions where we do have to curl up? Sort of. Yeah, I don't want to go with lifting and stuff because I'll get in trouble. You're getting out of the chair because lifting, people don't like the flexion business because, yeah, so we just won't go there because our health and safety Nazis in the room will go after me saying you shouldn't flex. Yes. Protection. Yep. Yep, the soft underbelly, as it were. Are we allowed to use the word underbelly in Melbourne, or is it still a secret? I was teaching here once when underbelly was everywhere else in the world, and you guys, Melbourne people, didn't know about underbellies because you don't know what I'm talking about. You still don't. It was a TV show called Underbelly, and it wasn't allowed to be shown in Melbourne because the court case for the original gangsters was still going on, or some crap like this. I'm right. Yeah. That's all you know now that you've got an underbelly. Yeah. Well, as if you wouldn't have known because, there's this thing called the internet. Yeah, anyway, there was a joke in here for a little while about underbellies. Yes, so protection. There's a snail thing in us, isn't there, that we want to curl up. Anything else? So in sitting, yes. Somersaults. Yep. Yes, some people really are comfortable sleeping, very flexed. Cutting your toenails. This is a thing. People, like I work with podiatrists, and when people lose their flexion, they can't cut their toenails, and then they're hooked for life into 6-week appointments with a podiatrist. It's very real. It's very real, this getting to your feet business. The people that I was on my walking holiday with were going, I've got to keep my flexion because I don't want to have to go to a podiatrist every 6 weeks. No one's a podiatrist here, are they? I'm not that I haven't got a podiatrist anyway, but, Yes. Dressing, yep. Putting on socks. Tying your shoes. Gardening, yeah. Yep. And often, there is a sort of a twist element to it, but, sometimes it's sort of straight. Could be 2. 1, yeah. Yeah. The twatch, yeah, well, it's not a twatch, then it's a twist and a flex. I don't know what he calls that. Twix. Yes, twex. Twexing. Okay, so let's go back to so he's noticed that people were having trouble with the twatch, so the twist and the extension. And that could be because some people can't get long in the front. And it could be because some people can't get short in the back. Right? There's two options. So why did he then do a lesson that's the opposite of getting short in the front? Stating the bleeding obvious. Might not be. Who finds that? I find that really difficult. Those flexion lessons, I'll give you a heads up, those flexion lessons are the most difficult for me of any lesson ever. So it's not, don't go with easy. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, maybe they're stuck here. Might be going against what they're doing. It might be. There's some other thing. Again, I'm sorry. Yeah, what am I thinking in my head now is what you're after. But there is a muscle tonus issue that I mentioned last week. Why would he want to activate our flexors a lot?
Is it the walking pattern?
Partly. You're all right. They're all right. It's just not what I'm after. Sorry. I know it's excruciating, but it's so much. It's like power for me. It just goes to my head. Agonist and antagonist. Yeah. Yes, there's something in that.
I noticed when I was walking something I've never experienced before now, that I felt like a bit, like a giraffe walks, this movement around here.
Yes.
And that was really nice. I've never ever experienced this
So there is
before.
something in this agonist, antagonist, and this feeling, this. So why are you now free to do this? Pardon?
Why?
What did you feel when you lay on your back after having, doing tiny, tiny little activations of your flexors, symmetrically and asymmetrically? What did you feel on your back? What happened to you lying on the floor? Amanda's back muscles felt like they had lengthened.
For me, it was the opposite. It was actually, I felt my front.
Lengthened?
That's what, I don't know exactly what happened, but when I had to first put my hand on my tummy to actually be able to do this cross flexing, especially to one side. And until I could feel this, when I put my hand on, I couldn't actually do it. And then suddenly it clicked. So.
Yeah. So what's happening physiologically is, and a lot of other things are happening too, like because
I'll throw it to whoever. Would you like the box?
All right, I haven't talked in the box. It's quite weird, isn't it? Welcome to your world, the world of the box. So, yeah, so I need to flex a little bit. So there's we could analyze this on the emotional level about, practicing closing up in order to open out all this sort of stuff. But on a very basic physiological level, both things can happen when you start working a muscle group a lot. So you're inviting them to shorten, which is what you were doing, inviting your flexor groups along your trunk to shorten. It will reciprocally inhibit the antagonist, which is what Madhavi said, what mentioned with the agonist antagonist. So reciprocal inhibition, what does it mean is, if I work these a lot, these will let go because you've got that loop going back. However, there's another funny thing, is you work muscles a lot, they let go a lot, they lengthen. Because there's this thing about if you contract a muscle, then straight afterwards it will lie back and have a cigarette. Right? You know that feeling? You contract a muscle and you go, okay. So there's everybody's right. There's two things happening. So it's a double win. So you can be, that lesson was relentlessly flexing, relentlessly getting the flexors of your front to shorten. And then remember when I finally said lower, when you come back to the floor, lower slowly. So you don't just go, nobody was doing that anyway. So the muscles are contracting short and then they're contracting back long again. but not contracting, but they're still working, right? They're actively shortening, actively lengthening, actively shortening, actively lengthening, in all these different little ways. And pretty much every permutation, well, apart from the going from symmetrical to asymmetrical, was activating these and ensuring that you weren't cheating using your extensors, right? So not pushing through the foot, because that would activate your glutes, not pushing through your head, which would activate the extensors of your neck, not pushing through your elbows, which would activate the back. So it was relentlessly flexing. Did you feel that? So who hated it? Yeah, I don't like them, but they're so good for me. Or you now why doesn't, yeah, Amanda loved it. Yeah, so yeah, you know you have to do it. Yeah, it's like pumpkin soup. You eventually come to love it because you know it's really good for you. Working them, activating them, shortening them, and then activating them and lengthening them. So, is ready?
Sorry, I just need, expecting more batteries.
Okay. I won't say any more.
There's 2 minutes.
You need to know the experience. If you know the background physiology, that's in a way that's more ego, doesn't that? You really need to understand the experience. So bend your knees up. Before we were talking about bones and
Maybe if they have some spare ones, just go to the shops.
Double A. Just tip your pelvis so that, thanks Dan, that's okay, we're back fully energized. Now you feel that there's 2 ways you can do it, right? If you push, so you put your pubic bones coming more towards your chest, that tilt, and then back, and then let it drop back. Now, if you push with your feet, you can actually not have anything happening under your hands. Right? And then let it go, let your pelvis roll back. And now don't push with your feet and activate something under your hands, gently, slowly, that brings your pubic bone more towards, well, it's actually more, in a way it's more towards the ceiling, but we're wanting to get that curving, folding feeling. So it's more towards your, let's say coming up towards your sternum, up towards your shoulders. Can you feel the difference? All right, so one is actually a movement of flexion in the trunk, activating your extensors, which we do sometimes, and the other is a movement of flexion activating from above. So we're pulling your pelvis forward, tilting it that way, as opposed to pushing it. Okay, so feel the difference between pulling and pushing in this instance. So it's not to say that either is bad, it's just in this instance she's really wanting to. Now put your one hand on your belly and one hand in the small of your back. So it's underneath you. And if you push with your feet, your back will still flatten. But it's not a neurological event happening. It's just the skeletally is being pushed flatter, right? If we want neurologically your back to lengthen, then you activate the front. So feel that the movement feels the same to your hand behind you, but there's a different neurological event happening inside your system. Feels different? Yeah? How? Your hands are feeling it different. Right, so your hands are into a neurological event. Yeah. So you could say, well, what is this? This is why these sorts of things are important in ATM, that people know what they're doing in order to do what they want. And well, in this instance, they don't know what they want. We know what they want, which is to get their tummy muscles just engaging a little bit and then letting go, and engaging a little bit and then letting go. Now feel the difference if you really tilt your pelvis backwards and then let it drop to its resting position. That's just the muscle letting go. Can you feel the difference between, or slowly lowering your pelvis back to where it started? Feel that difference. And my instruction was to slowly lower it back. And can you feel that when you slowly lower, there's still tension in the muscle, but it's paying out. It's lengthening, working to slowly lengthen. Is that sort of clear under your hand? Pardon? Clear in your mind as well? You mean they're connected?
Clear in the back.
Clear in the back, okay. All right, so play around a little bit now. So we talk about the belly like it's one thing, but of course the belly has lots of things, the flexors across the front of you have a lot of things. Now, where would you feel that, leave your pelvis alone and just lift a shoulder, lift the shoulders up and move your hands around a little bit and feel where that may or may not cause some liveliness. All right, are you starting to get a sense of what I mean by lively now? This kind of, that the muscles are kind of more willing to act. So there's a lot of muscles that help bring the shoulder forward. And you could play around with, if you know, right at the beginning, and the instructions were quite clear. It was just the shoulder forward first, and then I added this thing about C7. So think about just the shoulders coming forward, thinking about C7 coming forward. And C7 coming forward probably evokes something different to just if you're thinking about the shoulders. Slowly, slowly. Yep, so I can see your hands roaming around to all the relevant kind of parts. Okay, now when you were satisfied, so I'd give you the heads up, right? So the shoulders can come forward with the pecs, pectoral muscles, so the muscles that lie underneath the breast tissue, they bring the shoulders forward. So if just one shoulder came forward and nothing else, you could just do it with your pecs. Now if the C7 comes forward, can you feel that there is the sternum actually is pulled down? The top of the sternum comes forward and down. So it's like that. It comes forward and down towards the pubic bone. And could you maybe get a sense that there is some activity in just underneath the lower ribs? But actually all the ribs fold forward. So those little bits of muscle between each rib kind of bend, bring each rib closer together. And then the rib cage in its entirety is brought more towards the pelvis. Does that make sense? So the shoulders are brought forward on the rib cage by the pectoral muscles. The ribs go down and towards each other by the little muscles in between them. Then the whole rib cage is taken down towards the pelvis a little bit, tipped forward by the front upper tummy muscles. that make sense? Does it make sense in you? Can you feel those? Maybe you just have to think it for a while. You might not sense it. Now, if you push with your head, find a way to push with your head so that nothing happens in your rib, nothing happens in your belly. Like your belly can just stay soft. And your shoulders come forward just by pushing through your head. So again, you can do a flexion movement of the upper trunk by using your extensors because of the floor. Some people can't do it because you're so good at flexing. What I'm asking you to do is something a little bit disorganized. And then stop pushing with your head and go back to lifting and feel the difference between lifting or rolling, actually, chest rolling down and the head staying kind of passive. So the lifting versus the pushing. Your shoulders being pulled forward, as it were, rather than your head pushing them forward. Is that sort of clear? Now you could push your shoulders forward by pushing your elbows back in the floor. Again, feel that you could push your elbows back into the floor and that will pop your shoulders forward. And again, your tummy muscles could stay absolutely quiet. So you could look like you were doing a beautiful flexion lesson. If you're using your feet and your elbows in the back of your head, your flexors might be as quiet and as dead as a doornail. Feel that?
I'm surprised how hard it is to make the stomach turn off.
Turn off, yeah. So for some people, turning their stomach off is really hard. So the coming back is really hard. And that's why this lesson, so there's a lot of lessons that do what we would say is balance the flexors and the extensors, because for some people, working the tummy muscles teaches you how to switch them off. For other people, working the tummy muscles teaches them how to switch their back extensors off, and all these permutations. So Feldenkrais used to say it's like the perfect diet. The perfect diet makes overweight people thin and thin people put on weight. And these lessons, balancing flexors and extensors, are absolute winners because they will speak to almost everybody because of this dual action. They're very, very clever. Very, very clever. Okay, so, and they will confront people too, just like I was in Perth a couple of months ago and we were doing some relentless back extension exercises. It wound them up like you wouldn't believe. It's just fortunate that they liked me because they would really have hated me if they hadn't liked me from a previous segment. Very confronting for some people to do relentlessly extending exercises. But they had the same kind of reaction. Some of them went, oh God, I can flex so much better, or I feel so much more balanced, or, all these completely kind of paradoxical responses. But that's the genius of this work, right? It speaks to people. This is like personalised medicine. It's fabulous. Now, yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then while I was alluding to, so I'm giving you all the trade secrets today. I'm going to have to kill you when you leave the room. It's like magician's secrets, isn't it, Dan? You just can't tell anybody. But so let's not assume anything. Some of you may have dropped into a feeling of stillness and quietness in your system during that lesson. Who did? Yeah, so probably about 60%, which is about, I say 80, 20, 60, whatever. Not everybody did, but some people did. Now, often a characteristic of finding that place of quietness is when there is this kind of balance between the flexors and the extensors. So you feel neither compelled to curl up into a ball or compelled to straighten and arch backwards. You feel simply where you are, right? So I'm not saying for sure that that's for everybody, but if you are thinking about this state that last week I called equipoise, so sometimes people call it neutral. We can debate about that forever. Equipoise, I just really like it because it's equitable. and poised, right? It's ready. It's not relaxed. It's equipoised. You're neither relaxed nor, I haven't got a word for, but you know what I mean, right? So there is an emotional state that can go along with not being committed one way or the other. This sort of sense of quiet. I'm just as ready to fall asleep as I am to go but I'm also kind of ready. Like if you said to me, I'm going, go and run a marathon now, I have that. I could very quietly, slowly get up and I could start jogging along because I'm in the zone, this kind of zone. Does that make any sense at all? All right, so we're trying to operationalize something that is quite intangible, but we can, because these intangible states exist in our physical form. We are just getting very manipulative in a way that we're finding signposts of ways to get there rather than it be serendipity, or that you have to pay $3,000 and go on a retreat in the Blue Mountains or whatever to find this state of equipoise. I don't know where your retreat places are. You don't have to go to Byron Bay. You do pay a fair bit. Yeah, sorry. Whoops. Yeah, sensitive point. Sorry. Okay. All right. So let's see. 11:45. Get into groups of 3, please. So we will, this is a slight tangent, but see, he did it for a reason, right? And I think it's reasonably apparent now why he did this.